Genesis is framed on monomyths. The monomyth is something that has become impossible to see, isn't it? I think people don't understand what it is anymore. I was making comments on talking to somebody on another channel, and somebody jumped in, another one of those people see you having a conversation and jump in, and somebody asked me, monomyth, did you just make that up to try to sound important? And it's like, oh my gosh, the monomyth has been around for so long. There's books on it. There's the original Star Wars trilogy was framed on the monomyth template. So it's like, boy, people don't know what the monomyth is anymore. There is a common framework. The monomyth is this. You take a template and you build a story on that template. That's it. That template is the one myth. However, it's not myth. The outer story is the myth. The template is not myth. The template is based on a human life cycle. So it's incredibly important. That's why the template is there. People would say, why do you follow these steps? Because you're born, then you start out pure, you get divided, you start having cyclical pain, you get called to go on to the adventure, you struggle to leave the past, you need to go get supernatural aid. Though these things are going to sequence because it's the way that if you were living life, you got hurt, now I need to understand it, I've got to turn inward. There's a healing path inward that is the template of the monomyth. People can't see that. That's exactly what the monomyth is. My name is Dan Paulson. Welcome to the video. All right, so this is tough because I realize I'm in the middle of two sides that are really at odds, the theist and the atheist that just like hate each other. I struggle to try to get anywhere. You know, you try to make sense out of the Bible and interpret things, and theists will just pound you, and not all, most of them. Then you turn around, though, and find atheists as you're trying to understand the Bible that are really just as bad. I mean, the swearing and calling you stupid and names and things like that, and you're looking at them, both sides going, all right, here's the deal. Metaphor, it's all metaphor. You want to see the ark? Here it is right here. This is the metaphorical ark right there. Who opens it and sees inside? Not the people who read it and don't interpret it. They're the ones that carry it. They carry the ark. They don't see inside. It must be interpreted. Who are the people that deny it? They're the people that say, yeah, there's nothing there at all. Meanwhile, there's something there that's the same thing we would find in Greek myth or in Indian works in the Mahabharata. Well, I don't need to keep naming them off, but if you were to try to interpret the Bible and find that in there, you have to understand it's a monomyth and how to interpret it. And if you don't know that and you don't know how to interpret it, you're just going to look at it and not understand it. I will say that the material tells us that not very many people are going to figure this out. Yeah, there's something in here. I'm in a small group for a reason. They're telling us that from way back when. There's going to be more people interested in fighting over the outer shell than there is people interested in figuring out what's actually in there. It is a path. It is a puzzle. It's something for me to figure out. I'm not going to look at the whole Bible. It's just look at the book of Genesis. But let's stop and talk about what the monomyth really is first. I'm going to bring up Joseph Campbell's, what he identified in the book, but I'm going to tell you right up front that it's not going to be used like that, and he doesn't have it complete, but let's just look at it and talk about it, and I'll show you why. And I'm going to tell you that people might say, well, who are you that you would think that you know more than Joseph Campbell? I will say that Joseph Campbell was a professor. Yeah, he taught mythology. He knew mythology. He would blow me out of the water with knowledge on mythology and what there is. However, as we go through here, what we're going to see is that there's some significant steps that he hasn't identified. And there's one template, a short template in the beginning of the monomyth that he never saw. And it's all over the place too. We'll see what those are. And he also left it very nebulous. Let's just look at it and see what the verbiage is. This is Joseph Campbell's monomyth that is incomplete. Now, why do I know more? Because instead of observing it from the outside and going, I see some repeating patterns, what are they doing? I was somebody that had to take the pathway. I got to know it experientially, not simply academically. So I'm approaching this from, here's how it works. This is what I did, and this is what I see. And you can look at it. This is not something, honestly, at this point, you don't listen to people and go, I'm going to believe them or not. This is a point where you're the kind of mind that goes, give me some knowledge. I'll decide for myself. Show me what you got, and I'll decide for myself. That's exactly what this is. That's how I work, and that's how this material works. You have to make it your own. If you don't, it doesn't work. So let's go ahead and take a look at the 17 stages of the Joseph Campbell's monomyth. We'll talk about this, and then I'll talk into more detail we'll get a better picture of what we're looking at. When we go to get into the material, we're going to find when we interpret it, there's more than these steps right here. Okay, it starts off number 1. And what I'm going to do is, first of all, let's just take a look at it. You see at the top, it says the 17th stage of Joseph Campbell's monomyth. This is from his book. He didn't put it in a chart like this, but what this is, you can see there's the circle right there, but it's sectioned off. There's a separation. Then there's an area down below the lower half called initiation and then a return. What this is a pathway, and it goes in a counterclockwise motion up there. The call to adventure is the first step. That's what he's identified, that what you're going to see in the story is first the hero is going to show up and there's going to be a call to adventure somehow. If we were to just make a recent comparison with something without any psychological baggage to it, let's just go to the original first Star Wars trilogy. First of all, I want to say that if you watch all of those movies, most people would probably say, yeah, the first 3 were really something. Man, I hooked into that. That was, that was it. You went for the ride. The next ones were just like watching a movie happening. They didn't have the same impact. Well, guess what? The first 3 were on the monomyth. The rest of them were not. Okay, we don't identify with those stories in the same way. Somehow in a monomyth, you're along for the ride because it's us. We don't know it. The call to adventure, that's when Luke got the droids. Refusal of the call, that's when Uncle Owen said, no, you can't go. We've got harvest going. However, something happens, he gets to go anyway, right? They come and kill Uncle Owen and his aunt, and he gets to leave anyway because there's no reason to stay. Supernatural aid is actually something that happens after the crossing of the first threshold. There's two things happening right there, where Luke is actually, he goes to that planet Dagobah or whatever to get training from Yoda. The supernatural aid is happening there. If we were to, let's do this one. Moses. Moses is called, he gets to Mount Horeb and he's like, take your sandals off before God, you're at a high place. Oh, okay. So he's getting called right there. And God says, you must lead my people. The refusal of the call was, I don't even speak right. Supernatural aid, here's your staff. Okay. We're going to see elements that he saw in there that you would look at and go, I never thought of it that way before. Okay, there's elements in here. Now, what is happening here as we look at that is the call to adventure is an individual that is saying, you know what, I'm done with my life. Here's the idea. Have you ever heard the saying, we all have 2 lives. And the second one starts the moment we realize we only have 1 life. I don't feel good. My life sucks. I want to make some changes. I want life to feel better. That's the call to adventure. That's not very many people right there. We just funneled it down to a very few people right there. Call to adventure. Not many people are going to go do it. The refusal of the call is, I got relationships. I got habits. I got things from the past. I got things that I need to resolve. I've got ties. I'm hooked in here that I have to let go. There's so many things that need to happen to leave. Think of your past. Think of healing. Think of your life. And if it's bad, not only do you have to change your life, but depending on how far you change, for me, I had to change friends. I had to change places that I lived. I didn't stay where I was. I had to continue to make changes. So it's very difficult. The refusal of the call can be, what if you're hurt? You're in a hurt situation and you need to get out of there, but you're also reliant upon that for, this is where I get my food. This is where the shelter is. This is where it's bad, but I have nowhere else to go. It's from here to homeless. What do I do? Okay, there's going to be difficulty leaving the past behind. There really will be. And the past might not just be where you are. It might be something that happened long ago. Maybe you're carrying something with you that the adventure is not to go anywhere physically. It's to go into the mind for healing. You're going to go defeat something up here in order to have a better life. The refusal of the call is probably more often than not thinking that there's something that happened in my childhood or some shame. There's things that I have that I'm holding on to that I don't even want to address. I don't want to talk about them. I don't want people to know. I'm ashamed or I'm hurt or I'm afraid or I have to I've got somehow that I don't even want it to emerge. That's going to be a refusal of the call right there. Supernatural aid is what we're doing right here. There is nothing supernatural. What it is understanding the process that we have become products of our thinking and our life experiences and the way that we're holding them. We started out in life living happy from a higher awareness. Then as we begin to have life experiences, we begin to shift and live through those life experiences. And the nature of those, if they're hurtful, there you go. Your life is hurtful. Where did you come from? Where were you born? Where do you want to go? You're going to have to move from where you start life to go someplace else. And you're also going to have to learn how to understand that those things that you're carrying with you are continuing to hurt you, and you have to let them go by dealing with them. But it's going to be so hard. Refusal of the call, supernatural aid, what to do. Crossing the first threshold. That's in the story. We would see that if we were looking at let's look at a story, a Greek myth called The Voyage of the Argo. And you can actually find a like a late 50s or something like that colorized Hollywood movie of that on YouTube. I think you can find that. I've tried posting some stuff from it before, and it's so copyright protected I can't post anything. But if you wanted to find it, you could go, find that. Basically what we have is this. Jason is called. The story goes that he's saved out as a child. He has to go defeat King Pelias. King Pelias represents his early self. And he crosses a first threshold, crossing a river to meet up with him. He also loses a sandal when he crosses the river right there. It almost signifies the idea that you're like, somehow getting grounded or something like that I'm not really sure. You don't see that in too many places, but we do see it with Moses on Mount Horeb. Eventually, they're going to cross another threshold that is a difficult threshold that's through the clashing rocks. There's going to be a struggle to leave the past as they have to leave an island that they're not getting away from successfully. And there is repeating cycles of pain as the seer Phineas, who has the direction, he's being tortured daily. His food is being defiled. He's stuck on an island. He's been blinded by Zeus. The food that he gets defiled. He's suffering daily. So that's the cyclical pain. And that cyclical pain, you will notice it's not here on Joseph Campbell's monomyth. He didn't see the cyclical pain, but it's the reason we go on the trip. The cyclical pain is an important element right there. Okay, so we're seeing that happen. If we were, and then what do? Finally, they sail through the clashing rocks, barely making it. If you were to go to Exodus, you're going to find the same thing with Moses. Moses is selected out as a child. He's put in a basket, saved from destruction. The cyclical pain shows up in the form of plagues happening over and over again. Pharaoh represents the early self that you need to get away from, that struggle to leave the past instead of the struggle to leave the island. Here it's Pharaoh saying, you can go, no you can't. You can go, no you can't. Plagues are coming, yes you can go. Okay, I changed my mind, no you can't. So there's the cyclical pain element happening right there. And then finally they do leave the past, and what do? They go through the Red Sea, barely making it. These are sequencing in stories at the same time. That's the pattern. That's what you're seeing right there. The crossing of the threshold. The belly of the whale now, that would be what he's identified here. That is being in the mind. If we were to, with the Israelite story again in Exodus, where was it? The belly of the whale was actually 40 years in the desert eating only manna. So we see that there's we see how the stories are working, that it's conceptual, that it's going to be continual steps around there, but also the way that Joseph Campbell has them, how he's identified them in verbiage still leaves them nebulous. Call to adventure, that's each of us deciding to do it. Refusal of the call, that's the struggle to leave. Supernatural aid is knowing what to do, crossing the first threshold, turning into your mind. There's two thresholds, right? You turn inward to your mind. We can address our memories all day long, but there's a place in there that's a dark place that we don't want to address. That's another threshold. He has a return threshold, but he doesn't have the first threshold and the second threshold in here. There's actually two thresholds. They're not always in the stories, so it's not a big deal. In the Jason and the Argonaut one, yeah, you see him cross a river. He crossed the threshold, meeting up with Pelias. That means I turned to myself, okay, time to deal with you. That's happened. But now, what do? We have to sail through where the bad stuff is. Now I have to deal with you. Let's go after that. The rape, the molestation, the stealing, the whatever it is. There's something back there that needs to be addressed. And when you think about it, that's obviously going to be unique to each individual, won't it? I mean, I might have something that bothers me that somebody else would go, yeah, that happened to me. Why would that bother you? It's what you've got put to it. So it's, what is it that bothers your life? That's it. And it might not be what bothers somebody else. We're resolving our own hurt. As we continue around here, we got the meeting of the goddess, temptation, atonement with the father, should be apotheosis, the ultimate boon, refusal of the return, magic flight, rescue from without, crossing the return threshold, master of two worlds, freedom to live. Okay, so his are kind of weird the way they sound. Meeting with the goddess is meeting with your inner self. When we're meeting up with a goddess, sometimes that means meeting up with your inner self. The atonement with the father, that is reconnecting with the higher awareness. We're going to see that in the stories. The apostasis, isn't that apotheosis? I got something wrong here. I'm not quite sure. I can't quite read that. Let me check in his book here. Apotheosis, yeah. So what that means is I've accomplished it. I've achieved my goal. What is it? Well, I got molested. I'm never telling anybody. Now I've talked about it. I've figured out that, oh yeah, it happens to so many people. Okay, I can let it go. It's a part of life that you're growing up with. Are you going to live forever? Find a way to change the memory is what we're doing. That's the ultimate boon. You get that healing right there. The refusal of the return, I don't know what that is. Magic flight, rescue from without. Sometimes somebody has to come and get you, I guess, in the stories to make them get bigger, but I really don't see those. So Joseph Campbell's is not exactly what we're going to be using. What I'm going to do, and one more thing, there's a part that he did not identify. There's an entire short template that is outside of the monomyth that he didn't identify. And think about that. By default, what would that be? If the monomyth it's a story for me to follow that is like, oh, this is about me. I'm turning inward. I don't want to do it. I have to understand what to do. I've got to turn inward. I've got to deal with my issues up here in my head. I'm going to have a tough time with it. I'm going to be tempted by things as I try to move along. I've got to reconnect with my higher awareness. As you go through this and you sequence the story that way, what happens before that? What happened in your life before you had to go on the trip? What's missing? All right. Every myth and religion series of, Greeks, Romans, Abrahamics, Babylonians, Egyptians, Chinese, Indians, everybody, and all of their mythology at the very beginning has a creation story, a very short creation story. That's the beginning of us. And after that, it's monomyth after monomyth after monomyth. You need to understand when you're looking at this is hard to unwrap, but Thor's hammer is like Moses' staff. Yeah, these are supernatural aids that we're going to be using to go defeat, to change. This represents the idea that we have to make changes. I feel this way. I have to feel differently. I got to have some kind of magical power to take this hatred and turn it into something that isn't hatred anymore, because it's, as long as it's hatred or shame or something like that, I continue to live through it that way. So I need this, whatever the magical property is, to change the energy of that so I no longer live through that. And really what that amounts to is saying I have a memory and an emotional state that I'm holding with it, and I have to look at it long enough to change the emotional state so that the way that I feel about it no longer hurts. We're going to see that end up in the story as well. The harpies that were destroying the food from Phineas, they're not allowed to kill him. And other stories, being trapped in nets or something like that, these bad elements, and being put away. What that represents is that the memory's still there, but it's no longer effective. You've healed from it. You have now destroyed its capacity to hurt you. Okay, is this making any sense? It's kind of thick. All right, what I want to do now, without going super farther deeper into it, is to find 3 examples in Genesis right here where we're seeing a repeat of something happen in the life cycle of a child. 3 times it's repeating. There's more, but these are easy to spot. Okay, as we get into this, for interpretation purposes, every bit of the story plays out in the mind. All the players are parts of us. Okay, the bad guy is the early self, or the bad qualities, the bad habits, the The things that act out of us, the Nephilim and things like that, are things that when we get triggered, we blow up, we explode, or we just get so angry, we're not in control. They're in control at that time because they're so powerful. All of those things are parts of the story that represent something in the psyche. We have to keep it that way. Remember, the template is made, and then you flip that template outward and say, here, create a story on this and make it as big as you want to. So every bit of that has to be extracted and put back into the psyche. And if they're using it out there with a bad female or something like that, that represents bad inner qualities. The male and the female is always going to be maintained as the hierarchy. The Jews are doing it as well as the Greeks. The male is the conscious quality. The female is the remembered quality. If there are multiple males, that's because there's multiple facets of us. We become divided, and we're going to see that here in the stories as we go through. Let's look for a beginning of life and a division that happens as we move along. I'm going to show you 3 repeats here that there's no way to explain them unless you interpret them in the psyche like this. Understanding that they're metaphorical, but that they do mean something. And if you interpret them in the hierarchy, you will see that there is mentally interactive steps in the verses, not just something. You worship it, you carry it. You interact with it, you've opened it up. All right, where do we start? All right, I've got Genesis up here from the NRSV, and I'm just using that for interpretation here. It's going to start right down here. This is us. At the end of chapter 2, then the man said, this is at last the bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This one shall be called woman, for out of man this one was taken. Therefore a man leaves his father and his mother and clings to his wife, and they become one flesh. And the man and his wife were both naked and were not ashamed. Okay, let's be very explicit about identifying this point. This is us right here. This is us being old enough now that we're self-aware. We're happy little kids, though, playing in the sandbox, having fun for some reason. Not everybody was raised that way. I know there's a lot of I get that. But presumably in the way the story works, that when you're born, you're connected with your higher awareness. You're living in a happy state. You don't have really memories that you live through. You have an inner self and a consciousness, but they are still pure. You have not experienced life. You have not been hurt. You are naked. Naked is analogous in the spiritual world for not being covered up with pain, hurt, shame, lies. I don't want, something somewhere. We're just pure little, physically naked, but spiritually naked too. Nothing is covering us. Okay, that's the state. You leave your mother and your father. You leave your beginnings. Your inner being is of you. Everybody is Adam in the consciousness, and everybody is Eve at the subconscious if you interpret this way. This is the creation of you. This is going to lead into a self-healing monomyth. This is not about the creation of the world. It's about the creation of each individual. Okay, so here we go on to life experiences now. It's called First Sin and Its Punishment, Analogous Terms. Now the serpent was more crafty than any other wild animal that the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, did God say you shall not eat from any tree in the garden? And the woman said, we may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden. But God said we should not eat of the fruit of the tree that's in the middle of the garden, nor shall we touch it, or otherwise we'll die. And the serpent said, you won't die. For God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be open, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. And she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both were opened, and they both knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made loincloths for themselves. Okay, this has to be really unwrapped. Remember, this is old code. Verbiage. Well, what I call this is cryptic lessons hidden in here. Okay, so the serpent represents life experience, more crafty. Yep, should not eat of the tree of the garden, will know good from evil. Yeah, when you're little kids, you don't know good from evil. You can't judge things. You don't know right from wrong, you're going to start having life experiences that is going to show you things like that. So the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and then it was a delight to the eyes. That's life experience. Temptation. We consume the temptation. We go, and The husband ate with her. They were both, their eyes were open and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made loincloths for themselves. So this represents having life experiences that now, remember, this is a mental process. Naked is not in the physical world, it's in the spiritual world. We've covered ourselves with some kind of shame or judgment based on life experience. They heard the sound of the Lord waiting in the garden in the evening breeze. God asked them, "Where are you?" This represents the separation of our higher awareness. Higher awareness is that part that we get to, that you can get there right now. You just put your mind someplace where all of your memories are not in your mind at that time. They're still there, but they're not actively in your conscious mind. You can get to a point in your own awareness where you look at yourself from outside of yourself and you're not feeling attached to the memories. We live through the memories without realizing this higher awareness is there. We can continually shift to it. We really want to get rid of the memories, and then we'll automatically live through that higher awareness again. This is what we want to get to. This bundle of memories is the mote in the eye. We're experiencing life through this massive stuff in here. That's the ought against our brother, that if we want to have God reward us in life in secret, we must resolve, okay, if we take care of this stuff, then life works better. All right, so in this case, let me get back to where. So there we have it. The Lord God said to the man, "Where are you?" So we're starting to now live through our memories and not through the higher awareness. I heard you in the garden. I was afraid, naked. I hid myself. Who told you you were naked? You've learned. You've had life experiences. Yes, the woman was with me. Why have you done this? Oh, I got tricked. Yeah, it's life experience. To the woman he said, "I will greatly increase your pangs in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children." There is our cyclical pain. If this plays out in the psyche, and what is the inner being and what is childbirth, and if it's in my mind, it's like those are analogous terms. That can only mean that every time I get triggered because of something that I consume, because of an experience I had, it's going to be painful. Yeah. And your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. The consciousness is always going to be the one in the driver's seat. Although when it's not paying attention, it's going to be living through the memories, which means Eve is going to be the one in charge, but not really. It's Eve just acting out with Adam not being in charge, not resolving it. Okay, if that makes sense. And to the man he said, "Because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree which I commanded you, you shall not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. In toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life." So you're now ready to go off and live life and have your life experiences detached from that happy, detached. You're no longer that happy, detached person anymore. You're going to live through your emotions and life experiences and your judgments. "By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread until you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken. You are dust, and to dust you return." Let's see. Eve, the mother of all living. Yep, everything inside of us. "Garments for the man, send them on their way." I'll try to speed this up. Cain murders Abel. This is now, okay, this is us going on in life. Now Cain and Abel are products of ourselves. The two ways that we could go. We could go good, we could go bad. And what happens? Cain went away from the presence of the Lord. That right there is where we lost connection to the higher awareness, but Cain was the one that killed Abel and is the one moving on. Okay, I don't know if you see that. Okay, so that's us right there. That's telling us that you're starting out in life, you're empty, you're pure, then you go out and have life experiences, and because of that, you're going to start covering yourself up, and you're going to go live life unaware and just go off and become products of what your life experiences are. And you're going to live through those, and whatever you're carrying with you is going to continue to cycle out as the life goes on. And that is how that story works right there. Now, what I want to do is jump to Genesis 12 and show you the same thing. Okay, Genesis 12 is the call of Abram. This is the start of the religion after an initial creation, but what we have here is the start of, it's not a creation, and it's not the start of a monomyth, but it's the start of a life cycle of a human. The call of Abram, you are Abram. Your conscious is Abram. Sarai, your inner being is Sarai. Instead of you being Adam and Eve, you are now Abram and Sarai. Now the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you." Yeah, leave your father and mother and cling to your wife. Remember, that's how Adam and Eve got their start, right in the beginning there too. Go to your country and your kindred and your father's house. Go from and to the land I will show you. So you're leaving that behind. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make of you a name great so that you will be a blessing. So now we're going into a nation and not the Garden of Eden. We're not starting out from our creative state, but we are moving along, and the template is going to stay the same, though. You'll see what I mean as we move along if you're following. I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. That's going to be cause and effect, and it's going to say that, good and bad are coming from the same place. So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. So we have an inner self, Lot, that is a conscious self as well. Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. The King James Version would say 70 and 5, and you would know that that is supposed to be a 70 and a 5, and that is a pure state. Abram took his wife Sarai. Sarai's name is repeated 17 times in the King James Version of Genesis, and that is collected as a good thing. So what we're finding here is that we have a pure state through a numbering system that's in the background. So this is like starting off naked, unashamed in the Garden of Eden. We are at pure state. In fact, let me sneak this in real quick. I know it gets a little too dense for people, but from the King James Version, I'm going to search for Haran. It appears 13 times in the book of Genesis, which is 1 over 12, which fits into the category of a bad direction. So this represents we are now going off like first sin. So Abram went as the Lord told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 70 and 5 years old when he departed from Haran. Abram took his wife Sarai and his brother's son Lot, and all the possessions that they had gathered, and the persons whom they had acquired in Haran, and they set forth to go to the land of Canaan. And when they had come to the land of Canaan, Abram passed through the land to a place at Shechem, to the oak of Moreh. At that time the Canaanites were in the land. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your offspring I will give this land. So he built there an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him. The offspring is all of the we start off with a couple of memories in life. We're going to have how many later on? Yeah, many, many memories. Those are the offspring. So he built there an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him. From there he moved on to the hill country on the east of Bethel, and pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And there he built an altar to the Lord and invoked the name of the Lord. And Abram journeyed on by stages toward the Negeb. Now there was a famine in the land, so Abram went down to Egypt to reside there as an alien, for the famine was severe in the land. Okay, we are living, Abram and Sarai, in a place where there's a famine in the land. The land is where we live. Famine, we have nothing to eat. This is spiritual consumption. We have nothing to consume. We're at a pure state. There's nothing we have to go somewhere to live life and have experience. And so this would be like don't eat anything in the Garden of Eden, but they ate anyway. In this case, it's like there's a famine. There's nothing to eat. So they're going to go somewhere else to get something to eat. When he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife Sarai, I know well that you are a woman beautiful in appearance. And when the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. Then they will kill me, but they will let you live. Say that you are my sister, so that it may go well with me because of you, and that my life may be spared on your account. When Abram entered Egypt, the Egyptians saw indeed that the woman was very beautiful. When the officials of Pharaoh saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. And for her sake he dealt well with Abram, and he had sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male and female slaves, female donkeys and camels. But the Lord afflicted Pharaoh with his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. Okay, let me stop for a second here and talk about this. All right, in interpreting in the same way, what has just happened here is that we've actually gone off, and Pharaoh represents the life experiences that we're going to go off and have. Instead of the serpent tempting us to eat of something, now we're going off, and Pharaoh represents, yep, I've left my childhood famine where there was nothing. I've now gone off to live in life, and I'm gathering up things along the way. Pharaoh represents my life, everybody's life. And what do you get by allowing your inner self to become full of the experiences, corrupted? You could call it that way. What it really is just memories of gathering up along the way, life experiences. And then what happens as a result? We're getting some things in return for it, right? But what are those things we're getting? You know what? When you have experiences in life, you gather something as a result. It could be good things. It can be bad things. So we got man servants, woman servants, all kinds of things, male and female animals going on here. So it sounds like Honestly, if you were not to interpret it, it sounds like he's given up his wife, his young, beautiful wife, to Pharaoh out of fear, but he gets stuff for it. It's like, well, that's a pretty creepy story. So if you interpret it, it's like, okay, it's not creepy after all. What it is, it's about me being corrupted in life, any of us. And that what happens as a result is that plagues come as a result. That's the cyclical pain we are now experiencing. Oh, yeah, the cyclical pain is happening. What's going to happen here? Let's get back into and continue reading. All right, so we had our great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. So Pharaoh said to Abram, "What's this you've done to me? Why did you not tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she's my sister? So I took her. Now then, this is your wife. Take her and be gone." Now, this is a case where it sounds like the past is telling you to get lost. Instead of you resolving the past is telling you you need to move along. You can come down when you're telling the story on anybody's side that you want to. Tell it from the good guy's side, the bad guy's side, however it works out. In this case, we have to dismiss ourselves from all of those things, that everything is analogous. All right, so they get sent on their way, but here's where we get our division now. Remember up above we had Cain and Abel that split. That was the next thing that sequenced. Look what's happening here. So Abram went up from Egypt, he and his wife, and all that he had, and Lot with him, into the Negeb. Now Abram was very rich in livestock and silver and in gold. He journeyed on by stages from the Negeb as far as Bethel, to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai, to the place where he had made an altar at the first, and there Abram called on the name of the Lord. Now Lot, who went with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents, so that the land could not support both of them living together, for their possessions were so great that they could not live together. Okay, the land is our life. Lot and Abram is our divided self. I want to live this way, but I'm doing this. But I want to do this, but I keep falling into this. This is what I want. This is what I do. This is what I want. This is what I do. This is our division. We're living together in the land that could not support both of them living together, for their possessions were so great that they could not live together. We're getting too full of stuff. And there was strife between the herders of Abram's livestock and the herders of Lot's livestock. At that time, the Canaanites and the Perizzites lived in the land. Then Abram said to Lot, "Let there be no strife between you and me, and between your herders and my herders, for we are kindred. Is not the whole land before you? Separate yourself from me. If you take the left hand, then I will go to the right, or if you take the right hand, then I will go to the left." Lot looked around about him and saw the plain of the Jordan was well watered everywhere, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt in the direction of Zoar. This was before the Lord had destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So Lot chose for himself the plain of the Jordan. Okay, so what's happening is the early self that is the more corrupt self is taking over the fertile land. It's going to be running things in the beginning. Does that make sense? It's really old. I mean, I don't know what to say. You have to put yourself, we're so in our modern biases, it's hard to do this. All right, so you see that happen there? The same sort of a thing happens. We start out pure. We've got our cyclical pain going on after having life experiences. We get sent on our way, and then a division occurs. I'm going to show one more quick, short piece that's not that detailed, but this is a fun piece to look at. Look for things like this. These should be very meaningful. All right, what I want to jump ahead is to something here that is in chapter 25, and it's verse 20. There's something here that when you read stuff like this, you understand what they're doing. It can be thicker elsewhere, but in places like this, for me, it seems to kind of pop out and make sense. Isaac is who? That's the conscious self. Rebekah is who? The inner self. Isaac was 40. 40 is collected as an analogous number that refers to the pure state. 40 is everywhere. 40 is how long the Israelites' years in the desert and 40 days in the wilderness for Jesus, for his purity. So Isaac here, 40, married Rebekah. Rebekah's name is repeated 30 times, so that's pure as well. So we know we've got pure state in the background. Of Bethuel, the Aramean, of Padan Aram, sister of Laban, the Aramean. Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife because she was barren, and the Lord granted his prayer, and his wife Rebekah conceived. So this is us, conscious. I just want something inside of me. I want to grow. Okay, that's kind of what that means, I guess. The children struggled together within her, and she said, "If it is to be this way, why do I live?" So she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples born of you shall be divided, and one shall be stronger than the other. The elder shall serve the younger." Do you see yourself in this? The nations, the two nations that are in our womb, the divided inner self. Two peoples born of you shall be divided. One shall be stronger than the other. The elder shall serve the younger. Okay, the earliest self, the pure child self, is going to be in servitude to what comes about later, the elder. The memories are going to take over. When her time to give birth was at hand, there were twins in the womb. Okay, it goes on. I don't have to keep interpreting that one. But, okay, so that's how you have to read them. And what I showed right there was just kind of like these childhood sequences where it's moving on. The third one, I didn't get into that whole thing. That was more just look at how this verse interprets right here. You can see how it's doing a very short beginning. But this is going to spread out throughout Genesis. It's going to get thicker and thicker in this way. But repeats are being done in a way that help. It's so big, I don't even know how to show people that. I show people and I think they just glaze over. But anyway, all right. This was mainly, though, on trying to show that there is a monomyth and that there are observable steps. But the way to observe the steps is to read them in such a way that you understand what they are. That crossing a river, that sailing through the clashing rocks, that going through the Red Sea, that being baptized, all represent crossing a threshold. They don't sound the same until you realize they're on a template where that's the next step. Oh yeah, the next thing that should be happening here is a crossing of the threshold. What do you know? There's a river, there's something that has to be gone through. There you go. At some point you see the template and you realize what's there. But it is not quick and easy, and we don't spend time with it today. The people that people back then would have had Genesis memorized. They could recite it and they could tell you how many times nouns and verbs have been repeated. They would know that 17 was collected in the flood, where it's tied to other numbers that are all continually pointing to each other to gather each other up. It's right there in the story. We don't see it. Let me show you this real quick. If you've been following my work, you know what this is. This is the number sequencing, and I'm still working on this. These are the good numbers that have been gathered. 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 9, 10, 12, 15, 17, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, and 90. Right there. Those numbers are repeated in the entire Bible approximately 4,000 times. That small group of numbers right there. Okay, so if we were to go back now and look at what we just saw, we would see that those stories happened at chapter 3, chapter 12, and chapter 25, which is a combination of 20 and 5 and verse 20. Those are all beginnings. You see that sequence? There's some magic in the background that we don't see. All right, well, I should end this. I know they get long. It's difficult to just lay this out, honestly. It's not difficult to lay it out. It's difficult to lay it out in a short period of time. There's just so many parts to it. It's very big. They lived through it like it was their everything. And we just give it a cursory glance. People that think they know the Bible well, I can tell you that, yeah, I know what you know. If we do that interpretation thing I've done before, where people are looking outward instead of inward, the thing to do is to turn inward with it. But if you're turned outward with it, you're going to be the theist or the atheist that are like fighting over the veracity of a supernatural carrier shell. There's something inside of it that needs to be looked in. I wanted to kind of point that out here. And having the guy the other day ask me if I made up that term monomyth, it's like, wow, okay. Yeah, we've kind of lost what's going on, haven't we? Mono, one myth. It's there. There's a template. Joseph Campbell's not complete. There's more to it. This channel is about working on that, discovering it, finding out what it is, and making it mentally interactive. So, all right. I hope that was helpful. You can see something in Genesis there if you know how to read it. If you don't read it, boy, it's some pretty creepy stuff. Those guys are giving away Abram, he becomes Abraham. He still is like scared, gives up his wife, but things, what you see and they have a son, Isaac, which is another iteration of self who does the same thing. Scared, I'm going to give up my wife. But what's happening here is that these represent iterations of us. If you don't, you would have to look at it and go, why would you worship such weak men and women that are just like sluts, for crying out loud? Actually, they weren't. What you look and you see through there, you would see that there's a decay in behavior. And when you interpret it, you realize this represents my life path to heal, to go from place to place, from my humble beginnings where I hurt, and how to get to some place that's called the kingdom of heaven. All right, hope this was fun and interesting. See you in the next video.